All right, perfect. Thanks, Mary Lee. I am Patrick Sullivan. I'm your guys' financial advisor on the 401k plan. But every year around this time, we also do host a lunch and learn that's kind of broader topics, not just related to the 401k. So, last year, the topic that we covered was, it was more so just broader financial education. We went into budgeting a little bit, talked a little bit more about investing in the second half, and then of course, how all that kind of interrelates to your retirement plan. Today, we're gonna go much more in depth about budgeting. So I'll just preface at the beginning, this is not meant to be preachy, that here, this is what you should be doing. If you're not doing this, you're doing it wrong. It's more so just tips and tools, right? And we don't expect you to take all of these things and implement them day one. It's more so just kind of thinking about things, when spending your money, especially at the end of each month. If you're feeling like it is getting tight, here's kind of things that you can think about that may build a little bit of alleviation in there. And then again, because my role is the advisor on the 401k plan, I try and weave the 401k plan back in when that makes sense. So I know it's a little bit of a more, I'll say intimate group today. So if you guys have questions, please ask them. If it's related to what we're talking about, that's great. If it's not, that's great too. We're booked for the hour. I really hope I'm not talking at you guys for an hour. But I've been known to do that. So seriously though, if there's things that you want to hear about that I'm not talking about, please raise your hand because this is supposed to be for you guys. So with that, I'll go ahead and kick it off. Jake was going to be here with me today, but he had something come up and wasn't able to be here. But we are your guys' dedicated advisors on your retirement plan. So that is my phone number. That is my email. Same with Jake. So if you guys have questions that come up, whether it's about 401k or otherwise, we're licensed financial advisors and we're resources for you guys as part of your Cohen-Esrey benefit. So please, if you take anything away, just know that you guys have us as a resource. If you have questions that come up after the fact, or if you go home, talk to your significant other, whatever it may be, and say, hey, maybe we do need to think about this. Schedule some time to meet with us. It does not cost you anything. It's just part of our service with the plan. So again, I mentioned budgeting 101 is going to be the bulk of what we talk about, and I actually added a pretty good section at the end specifically about debt management. I think that is something that kind of just goes underappreciated when you think about your budget and you just know, hey, I got, whether it's good debt or bad debt, you just make your minimum payments, but what does it actually look like in practice if you want to make more than your minimum payments, even adding an extra $100 to your payments each month, what that looks like in the long run. So we'll go through some exercise about that. But of course, we're going to start with the 401k plan. So again, that's the primary role I serve. So we'll just start off and just remind everybody about the 401k plan benefit. In order to be eligible for your own contributions, you have to work for the company for 6 months. Once you work for the company for 6 months, you'll be eligible to start putting in your own money. You'll actually be automatically enrolled at 6%. So if you don't want to be in at 6%, you go onto the T. Rowe Price portal and select otherwise up or down. And you guys can do that. Then after another 6 months, so 1 year of service, and then of course, as long as you're at least 19 years old, then you'll be eligible to start receiving that company matching contribution. The company matching contribution is right here. It is 25% for every dollar up to 6%. So otherwise, if you put in 6%, you get 1.5% contributed to you in your retirement account, which is free money. It is literally free money that you're immediately getting in your account. If you think about it like investing in returns, if you put in 6%, you immediately get a 25% return on your money. Nowhere else in the world can you get a guaranteed 25% return on your money, except for matching in the 401k plan. So another big takeaway from today, if you're eligible for the plan and the match and you're not doing 6%, really encourage you to do that to make sure you're taking full advantage of the free money. Another piece that we'll talk about real quick on when you go in and make the election, again, it's a T. Rowe Price, which I'll touch on at the very end where you go to do that if you don't know, because we did recently move from One America to T. Rowe Price. You'll go through and you'll select, obviously how much you say, we just talked about that, recommend at least 6%. And then the next option is, okay, well, do you want to do pre-tax or Roth? Do you want to save on a pre-tax basis or a Roth basis? You have both options available to you. Pre-tax, just as it sounds, is money going into your retirement account, pre-tax, before taxes are assessed. So I use $100 just as a round number. If you want $100 to go in your 401k account, $100 comes out of your paycheck, $100 goes in, no taxes. Now, say that $100 grows to $300 by the time you pull it out in retirement, you pay tax on that full $300. So, conventional wisdom is if you think that you are in a higher tax bracket now than you will be in the future, maybe defer those taxes to the future when you think you could potentially be in a lower tax bracket later on. The exact opposite of that is the Roth option. So if you want $100 to go in your 401k account, it may be $120, $130 that actually comes out of your paycheck. that additional $20 or $30 is that Roth tax that's being withheld right then. So then using that same example, if that $100 grows to $300 by the time you pull out in retirement, you don't owe tax on the 100 because you already paid it. You actually don't owe tax on the $200 worth of gains either. So that's tax-free growth. That's the power of Roth. Generally speaking, the conventional wisdom is if you think you're in a lower tax bracket today, or you have a really long time horizon for that money to grow tax-free, Roth could be really, really beneficial for you. We would not offer both if one was better than the other. It really is about your personal situation. It's going back to the one-on-one meetings that Jake and I do. It's exactly what we're here for is, hey, there's my situation. What should I do? And I won't be able to tell you exactly what you should do, but I'll educate you what someone in your shoes would probably benefit from. And you can do a combination of both too. Worth noting, if you do the Roth, it's always that company contribution, 1.5% is always going to be pre-tax. So if you're doing Roth, the company contribution will always go in pre-tax because they're not going to pay tax on that company contribution for you, which would be great, but doesn't work that way. Then finally, the vesting schedule on those company contributions, there is a 5-year graded vesting schedule. So what that means is after 1 year of service, you get 20%, 2 years of service, or sorry, it's after 1 year, it's 0%, 2 years, 20, and then 20% each year after that, until your 5-year anniversary, 100% of those matching contributions belong to you. Okay, anything that you put in on your own, immediately yours, because that was your money that you earned to begin with. So anything you put into the plan always vested on your behalf. Any questions on any of this stuff? Okay. So now into the budgeting piece, which this is, kind of switching gears a little bit from the 401k and the retirement plan stuff, just broader scope when you think about, just building your budget. There's a lot of, I think a big, I don't know if I want to say issue, but I think it's, we use the word inertia a lot in our industry about once you're doing something, it's really easy to keep the status quo and not change it. And budgeting really falls into that too, just how people spend their money. It's like, this is what I spend my money on. That's just what I do. Right. And you may not necessarily realize that there's a problem there. As long as at the end of each month, you're still making, more money than you're spending. There may not be a problem that's really easy to identify, but when we actually kind of peel back, it's like, all right, well, where's that money going? Are you saving any of that money? Or is all of it going out the door towards things you need, right? And so when we talk about a budget, there's the necessities, there's the wants, and then there's savings. If you're spending all your money on necessities and wants, I mean, that you could be needing those types of things, but what's left over for the actual savings piece? That's what we'll kind of talk about a little bit today. And so we'll kind of go through real quick at the beginning, why is it beneficial to budget? Again, some of that may seem pretty obvious, but we'll touch on some of those things. And then why don't people budget? Which, we just kind of talked about inertia and status quo is one of those things. But flipping that your favorites once you do it, it's almost just kind of like flipping your brain to a different way of thinking about, all right, I've kind of got this much allotted roughly towards going out to eat, entertainment, vacation, whatever it is. Am I really being thoughtful about how that's going to affect the rest of my budget? So we'll talk a little bit about those things. So first, why we should budget. Obviously, the things that we probably all understand is gaining an understanding of where our money goes. Obviously, if you've got a family and, or a new significant other, whatever it may be, making sure on the same page there, because that can be the source of a lot of angst in relationships if you're not on the same page about spending money. Gaining control of your financial future, that kind of goes back to the savings piece that I talked about before. If you can get money saving early, you can get it in the market early, it will really change your retirement outlook down the road. And I really do think one of the biggest ones is reduce anxiety. So that's the thing down at the bottom. Talked a lot about inertia and status quo and everything. I think a lot of people, it's not even necessarily building the budget that gives them stress. It's actually about knowing where their money goes, right? I don't even know if I want to know, right? But then once you kind of rip that Band-Aid off and get past that first step, that actually in itself reduces the anxiety. Because I think the most stressful thing is not knowing what the problem is. Once you know what the problem is, it's a lot easier to fix the problem, right? So, and again, this is just blanket saying if there is a problem, there may or may not be. But I think even just identifying what the problem could be in your budget, where's that money actually going, that in and of itself will reduce a lot of the stress. Which then, as we know, we've all heard about it, stress flows through to every other part of your life, right? So that's, I think personally, that the biggest reason why building a budget beyond just actual financial reasons. And then why we don't, and again, kind of back to my point, not to be preachy and everything, but it feels like you're punishing yourself, right? Oh, well, I'm building a budget because, I've done something wrong in the past. And that's not necessarily the case, right? it really is, just think of yourself as running a business, right? I kind of alluded to it before. You gotta have more money go in than it's going out, right? It's as simple as that. Your household is a business. Think of yourself as the CFO of your household, right? You're bringing money in, you're spending things on things you want, things you need. You gotta make sure you're running a good business, okay? And that's really as simple as that. So from here, we'll kind of go into a little bit more of what the actual budget should be. And again, it's a very general framework. And if you go in and you kind of do the back of the napkin math after this, and you're like, man, I do not fall into that at all. It's not meant to be a punishment again, right? It's meant to start understanding where is my money going and how can I over time kind of adjust things. So again, so some of these slides, I think they're not meant to be, speaking down or, diminutive, but it's immediate gratification versus deferred gratification, right? And so there's some slides later on to talk about, the immediate gratification thing, right? And it's so easy today with our algorithms and everything on our phone, right? You don't even have to be searching for something. Your phone will hear you talking about something and you will literally see ads for it, right? And it's like, oh man, that's only $30 on Amazon. I can do that. But then what if you do that 5 times in a month, right? Now that's $150, right? That can add up pretty quick versus deferred gratification, which is hard to quantify, right? You can't even really think about what am I going to be like in the future? What am I going to want to spend money on in the future? What it does though is it just gives you flexibility, right? It gives you freedom in the future because money really is freedom because you don't know what you're going to be like in the future. You don't know what your life's going to be like, but when you have money, just gives you more options for independence. So this one, I don't even know necessarily that the text is super helpful on this, but I think setting goals is the big thing. When we talk about deferred gratification, think about, 1 year down the road, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, what are your goals? Is your goal to, get married and have a nice wedding? Is your goal to buy a car? Is your goal to buy a house? Is your goal retiring? Those types of things. And when you set those goals, not just the nebulous goal of, I want to retire. What do you want your retirement to look like? Right? Do you want to stay in, in town? Do you want to move back to where family is? Do you want to be able to travel around? Those types of things, when you can set goals and really start putting numbers to those goals, it's a lot easier to chase that target rather than just, I want to retire, right? Because it's what does that retirement actually look like? Or your house. It's like, I want to buy a house. Okay, well, where do you want to live? What kind of house do you want to live in? How much do you actually have these months? Once you kind of start quantifying those things and set those goals, and it sounds dumb again, but literally writing it down, whether physically by hand or in a spreadsheet, whatever you guys do, once you can see it, it's a lot easier to chase those goals once they've been written down. So this is when we start getting into the actual budgeting guidelines. So I talked a little bit about this before, the kind of the needs, wants, and then the savings piece. To ensure more money's coming in than going out, right? So the first thing, which I really would encourage you guys to build a budget coming out of this, and it can be as simple as these are things I need each month, these are things I want each month, and these are savings. I'm a crazy person, so I get more granular that here's how much I'm spending on, entertainment, here's how much I'm spending on going out to eat, here's growth, you can itemize it as much as you want. There's a lot of good apps to do that stuff too, like Mint is a good one. I think Rocket Money has one now. There's a lot of paywalls behind those now, so I just do mine in a spreadsheet, which again, because I'm a crazy person and that does take up a lot of time on my Sunday afternoons, but at least it's football season, so I can watch football while I'm doing it, but so ensure more money's coming in than going out. So start off listing, what are the things that you need each month, right? That's gonna be rent, it says right there, it's gonna be rent, utilities, groceries, minimum debt payments, those things that, if, if you had to get those, if you couldn't spend money on anything else, what are the things that, no matter what, those payments are being made? That's the first thing, right? Next piece is gonna be, which is on the next slide, is more of the things you want. I won't get too far ahead of myself, but sticking on the things that you need to spend, set up those automatic pay yourself first, right? So if that's exactly what the 401k plan is, right? You don't have the ability to spend that money. You sign up online and you say, whether you leave it at 6% or what, that money is coming out of your next paycheck and it's a line item just like taxes and it's going into your 401k account. You never get the chance to spend it. I think that is one of the underappreciated things about a 401k, because if it goes into your checking account, we all know there's a million other ways that we can spend that money. And it kind of goes back to the, the self-discipline of, all right, am I actually going to put this money into an investment account, go pick my investment? Chances are that's probably not going to happen, right? Unless you've got a really, built-in process that you're doing, which is what the 401k was invented to do. Does that for you. As long as you make the decision one time, in the future you've set that up, goes back to inertia. Now it's status quo and it's just rolling and you don't have to worry about making that change. IRA contributions, I'll touch on that in a slide, and other investment accounts here in a little bit. I won't spend too much time on that. And then there's discretionary spending comes last. So this is kind of the first way of thinking about it in your head of, you know, things you need first, then your savings, then the wants. This is the actual kind of framework to try and build from. So it's the 50-30-20 rule. A lot of people have taken credit for this, and, you know, there's books written on it and everything. I don't know who the actual, you know, creator of it, but it's just kind of what we were talking about before, starting with the things you need, 50% of your money, whether you do it by month, extrapolate it out over the year, whatever you want to do, 50% of your money each month should be going towards the things you need. It shouldn't be more than 50, right? And in reality, especially if you're earlier on in your career, or, you know, whatever it may be, it's probably going to be more than 50, right? I mean, I'll sit down and do this with people, and that number can approach 80%. And that could spark some other questions. Well, should you really have a $450 a month car payment? Or did you, you know, go a little bit too far on the rent that you're paying, right? Those types of things, which are hard conversations to have. But again, better to understand what the problem is than to just know there's an issue and not address it. So that's the needs column, is the 50% again towards the things that you need. And we'll go a little bit more granular on how much towards each one of those. 30% is the wants. And really that should be kind of what's left over. And I know it's a little bit out of order on here, but it's just the bigger number to the smaller number. Really should start at the 50% it needs, 20% towards savings. And that savings could be a combination of a whole bunch of different things, right? 401k is that one that we talked about earlier. Make sure you're at least doing that 6% if you're eligible for the match. And even if you're not, we'll get to the number that we encourage you to be saving at anyways, match aside. Making debt payments beyond your minimum payments. Then the emergency fund. And there's a reason that they're ordered this way. The emergency fund is actually number one on the hierarchy list. And that comes from me as your retirement plan advisor, right? So I would love to tell you that retirement plan comes first, but the emergency fund is actually the first one there. So when you think about, which we'll talk about next slide, yeah, sure is. So when you think about the emergency fund here, it's 6 to 9 months worth of savings, right? So if you look up this online, I mean, there's conventional wisdom all about this kind of stuff. 3 to 6 months is usually that number you'll see. I challenge you to say 6 to 9 months. Beyond that, you don't really want to have too much more cash, because then it's not going to be keeping up with the effects of inflation, which is the whole reason that we invest in our 401k plans to begin with. It's because if you stick money under your mattress, it's becoming less valuable every day. Just kind of as an anecdote, if you put $100 under your mattress before COVID, you took it out today, it's worth about $75. Things are about 25% more expensive on average across the board. So that's why we want to invest, is to make sure that that money is at least keeping up with the effects of inflation, and hopefully a whole lot more. So when we talk about 6 to 9 months worth of expenses, this is not 6 to 9 months worth of everything that you spend in a month. It's 6 to 9 months worth of this piece, right? So if the worst was to happen and you don't have income coming in anymore, what are you going to do, right? And that's going to be those things, right? If money's not coming in the door, you're probably not buying a new stereo system. You're probably not going on vacation, right? So what is the money that you need to have each month? So yeah, towards those things: rent, car payments, groceries, all that kind of stuff. So 6 to 9 months, again, it's back to the napkin math. You just go on and say, all right, well, how much am I paying in rent? How much my utilities? Find that number, multiply it times somewhere between 3 months and 9 months, whatever you think is best for your situation. That's what we recommend having on hand. And then don't leave it in a brick and mortar savings account. Where interest rates are right now, if you're out trying to get a mortgage or buying a car, those interest rates suck. It's not fun to go try and buy something like that if you're financing it. But where it does help us is in these high yield savings accounts. So we just basically flip that in our favor. So in a brick and mortar savings account, you know, personally, you know, Commerce Bank's one in town, they'll probably pay a 0.25% APR or something, and you'll basically get a couple pennies in your account at the end of each month. Where a high yield savings account, they're paying right around 4% right now. Even with rates coming down a little bit, they're between 3.5% and 4% right now. So you got $1,000 in there. I mean, that's 35 to 40 bucks, right? So that's a more meaningful number than a couple pennies, right? And if you can get that, you know, 3 to 9 months in there, 6 to 9 months in there, hopefully it's more than $1,000 in there. If you can get $10,000 in one of those accounts, now we're talking about $300 or $400 a year for doing nothing, right? And that money's still fully liquid that you can pull out at any time. So that's what I'd encourage you guys to do with that emergency fund piece. If you go to Google, if you're saying, oh shoot, I've never heard of one of these, if you go to Google and just type in emergency fund, the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to get a whole bunch of ads for like credit card companies and everything. And then there'll be an article from NerdWallet that I swear that's the one that you're going to see first, but it actually is a pretty good article, and it'll go through well, here's Ally Bank, here's SoFi, here's Goldman Sachs, and they'll just kind of go through and give you some options. As long as they're FDIC insured, and as long as there's no account minimums or restrictions, right, as far as getting your money out, they're all pretty much the same. Just find the best rate, FDIC insured, and make sure you can pull it out whenever you want. As long as it meets those three things, then they're all pretty much gonna be the same from there. So it's whatever, whatever kind of framework or platform you like the best. Like SoFi right now, they're doing a huge marketing deal, so you can actually get some pretty good deals. And then there's some that say, hey, if you deposit your check with us from your company, it'll raise it from 4% to 5% or something like that. Now that's up to you to decide if you want to change your entire bank on where your check gets deposited and everything, but those things are out there. You can kind of explore that stuff. Any questions on emergency fund or anything like that?
So would say to do, because I'm kind of trying to balance the emergency fund and the debt and the saving for braces, calls, all the things.
Sure.
But you would say, don't pay off the debt early until you're at that 6-month mark. So I feel like it's kind of tempting when you're in the middle, when you're like, oh,
it depends on the type of debt. So that's a very good point, because the kind of when we get into this debt management section, I want to make sure I leave plenty of time for it. It depends on the type of debt, because if we're talking about credit card debt, that moves up the hierarchy pretty quick, right? But if we're talking about you have $0 in an emergency savings account, really want to build up at least some form of a cushion, because obviously, if you don't think, hey, my income source probably isn't going to stop, but winter's coming up, what if the furnace goes out? You do not want to have to take out a payday loan to go replace the furnace or something like that, because then you're just adding to that problem, right? Just literally throwing fuel on the fire of that debt problem. So the emergency fund, and again, this is where not every situation is the exact same, we kind of start with the framework. Would be happy to talk with you personally exactly what it kind of looks like. I still think the emergency fund is up there, but then, I mean, if you've got credit card debt that is kind of starting to snowball, then maybe we say, hey, you've got enough in the emergency savings fund, we really want to attack the debt, right? And that goes for, towards the 401k to 6% towards the match. If there's not any money left over to attack the debt after the 401k, maybe you pause the 401k and start attacking the debt. So not every situation is the exact same. We kind of start with the general framework, but once we start talking about bad sources of debt, which we'll touch on in a little bit, that moves up the chain really quickly. Okay, that all make sense? Yeah, so I know it's not a perfect answer, it's I need to know a little bit more. But if it is in your mind, if you're thinking, yeah, this is a very high interest debt, then that's gonna start taking priority pretty quick. Okay. And I promise we'll talk a lot more about that in a sec. So I know that this, I guess, sort of fits in there as we're talking about saving. So then the next logical question is, all right, well, if I'm supposed to save 20%, how much should I save towards my 401k? This is the amount that we've kind of agreed upon as an industry to be able to replace that same level of income and maintain the same standard of living once you get to retirement. 401k plan wasn't invented until like the mid 1970s. And so the first people to save their full career in a 401k plan only started retiring about 10-15 years ago. So then we had that data of, all right, who were those people that saved their full career in a 401k plan and were able to have a successful or dignified retirement of that same standard of living? And 15% was the number that we came up with. And really the number's 10 to 15%. But again, I'll always err on the high side of challenge to get to that number. So 10 to 15% is about the number that we want to target, right? 6% is the number that we would encourage you to at least start with. Now, if you're at a point where you're in 0, going straight to 6 may be a little tough. Going straight to 10 is probably very tough. But there's automatic features in place. Like T. Rowe Price has a really good interface to do those types of things. So if you go log in, you'll say, yeah, I'll do 6% pre-tax or 6% Roth right now. But then it'll say, all right, do you want to do automatic increase? And you can go up by 1% every October 1st until you reach 12% or whatever you choose. That way, without you even having to log on and do it, going back to that inertia word that we keep talking about, you make the decision one time and then it just happens automatically. And that first paycheck happens in October and it's 1% more than was coming out the last year. You probably will notice it at first, but as long as you don't change it, I mean, there's behavioral or finance, all those types of 2-3 paychecks later, you're not even going to notice, right? It's 1% of that paycheck. Over time, that is going to be a meaningful effect. We talk about getting that money in the market, getting it growing, have that compound interest stacking on top of it. Again, you may feel it when it first happens, but over the long term, you likely won't. And And then also worth noting, your 401k plan, it's not like other benefits where you can only go change it during open enrollment season. You can change it throughout the year. So if there is something that comes up and, say, hey, we are saving for braces, or we're saving for school, or we're saving for something, and I'm at 10%, well, I'm gonna walk it back down to 6, make sure I'm still getting the match, but I'm gonna take that extra 4% and apply it to other things in life, right? I mean, we're humans, there's human things in life. You don't wanna just be sacrificing the pleasures of life just so you can get your extra 4% in a 401k plan, but we wanna be prudent with how we're doing it. So over the long term, 10 to 15% is kind of the range that we wanna target there. Okay, so these slides are kind of just some more tips about planning for the future, but again, I want to make sure that I leave plenty of time for this debt session, so I'm gonna go through this a little bit quickly. So main takeaway on here is that your employer offers a 401k plan. I mentioned it earlier, no other place are you gonna get a guaranteed return on your money the second you contribute it. That should be one of the big takeaways, is make sure you're taking full advantage of the match. If you're not eligible for the plan, which I know I recognize a lot of faces in here, a lot of people are eligible, but if you're not eligible for the plan or for the match yet, you say, hey, I want to be able to contribute to a retirement plan. Every American out there who has a source of income can contribute to an IRA. IRA stands for individual retirement account. You can go to Charles Schwab, you can go to Fidelity, you can go to any one of these sites that you've heard of. You can go and you can open up. The two that I'm most familiar with and are the two biggest out there are Schwab and Fidelity. No account minimums, no fees, none of that. You can go up and open an IRA today, and you can put up to $7,000 a year into an IRA. If you're over age 50, you get an additional $1,000 that you can put in there. Same choices that you have in the 401k plan. You can do pre-tax, which will lower your taxable income. So if you make $50,000 a year and you go put $5,000 into an IRA, now you've lowered your income in the eyes of the IRS to $45,000. So when you go file taxes in April, you've been having taxes withheld on 50 grand. Well, you're probably going to get a little bit of a credit back because 5,000 of that was put into an IRA. When you do it through the 401k plan, they account for that. So it's not going to affect, it's going to be noted on your W-2. But the IRA, because it's not done through your work, is a little bit different. So if this is something you're interested, again, I'm happy to show you, how to do it, the right buttons to click and all that. Where it's a little different than the 401k plan. 401k plans are supposed to be really easy and repeatable, where you log in, there's a default investment for you if you don't want to, handle all that. In an IRA, you've got to go pick your investment. So it's like, yeah, I want to put $1,000 in this thing today. Okay, well, it's sitting in cash. Now you got to go pick from the world of investments on how you want to invest it, right? And you can go just pick the exact same target date fund that you're in the 401k plan, or just look up Schwab target date fund or whatever it is. You can do that, but the onus is on you to pick your investments, where in the 401k plan it's done for you if you don't want to do that. This is one of the things I talked about, when we pause on that immediate gratification side pretty quickly. And this actually is something that I do practice, not for everything that I'm buying, but for the things that's like, hey, I really want to buy this new shirt or whatever it is, right? It's like not something that I need, but it's something that I got on my algorithm and I want to buy. Earmark it, save the tab on my Safari, whatever it is, come back to it in 30 days. And if I still want it, I'll buy it. But if 30 days later, I'm like, I don't need that shirt, exit out of it and go from there, right? And again, we're just talking about tips. If you're looking at those, we talk about those unnecessary items or the wants column. If there's something in there that doesn't necessarily align with what the budget is, just save it. And 30 days is, even if it's a week later, right? Just earmark it, look at it a week later. If you still want it, then you've determined that, okay, this wasn't just an emotional, move, I just wanted to buy this right now. Can look at it a little bit later. You've had time to think about it, decide if that's actually something you want. Then making a list. You can think, I would assume most people, when they go to the grocery store, are making a list, but think about that for other things too, right? Like if you are just scrolling on Amazon, if you're looking for something, have a list of what you're looking for on Amazon and don't just start adding to cart. I know our household cart on Amazon is a scary place. The amount of things, it's just, oh, we'll save this for later, add to cart. It's like 47 items in the Amazon cart. So again, tracking it, sticking to it, those are just some tips when you're doing this stuff. And then now we are to the debt management piece. So before I get too far into this, are there any other questions? And I went a little quickly through kind of the IRA stuff, but about just the budgeting framework. Any questions on this before we move to the next piece? Okay. And I will share all this stuff with you guys too. All right, so, there's transitions on this one, look at that. So the debt management piece, when we really just look at it from bird's eye view, there's really two types of debt. There's good debt and there's bad debt. When you think about what good debt is, something that you're building equity in, and it's relatively low interest. easiest one to point to is your house, right? If you own a house, you have a mortgage, that's probably your biggest expense, but you are paying money towards something that you own, right? It is not paying money into something that you do not own. And that's not necessarily a knock against rent, because that's not debt, that's just an expense for housing, right? But a mortgage is something that you own. It can be kind of tough to see how much is going towards principal versus interest, but again, you still are putting money towards something you own. Again, should be relatively low interest, and I know interest rates are higher today, but it's gonna be below 10%. Student loans, again, that's investing in your future, right? You may have this job today because you took out a student loan, right? So those are types of good debt. Then low interest on auto loans. Anywhere it says high interest on auto loans, I don't know, I think most auto loans are good, especially because they're a tool. They're a tool that you need to use, whether to go to work, to be able to have income, whatever it may be. So I mean, unless you had some pretty serious high interest on your auto loan, most forms of car loans are good. And then, just as it says right here, make required payments, but don't pay off faster until bad debt's gone. One of the other things we'll talk about, or sorry, we won't talk about it here, but one of the other things we talk about with our, people we meet with them is, whether it's, hey, I just got a bonus, or I just got whatever it may be, I wanna put it towards my house. It's like, okay, well, how much is your mortgage? 4%. It's like, okay, so let's think about that. If you got, just out of nowhere, $5,000 that you wanna either an extra mortgage payment or whatever it would be, and you wanna pay it towards your house to save on that 4% interest rate. How much do you think you can make on that money if you go put it into your retirement account, an investment account, whatever it may be? Probably more than 4%. So then does it really make sense to be putting that money towards something that is an asset of yours that is only a 4% interest, when really you think in most cases, I mean, the market the last several years, all of your retirement accounts are up over 10%. No matter how you invested, all of your retirement accounts are up over 10%, as long as you at least had some equity, some stock. So it's kind of a tough way to think about that. It's like, okay, well, yeah, I guess if I do put it in the stock market, I probably can make more than 4%. So it's, do I think I can get a higher return than the actual interest payment that I'm making on that? So it's one of the things to think about. If you have been thinking you want to make an extra mortgage payment or something like that, think about what your mortgage rate is. Right now, if you're at a 7% mortgage, a little bit of a different story. I mean, that's a pretty high rate. Hopefully the next year or two we'll be able to refinance at a better rate. But that's something to kind of think about with those types of good debt. You got to have a pretty compelling reason to make additional payments on those, because those are an asset of yours and they're hopefully pretty low interest. Now, bad debt is kind of these we teased a little bit earlier. Those things move up the hierarchy really quick, right? Because bad debt can be really crippling, and can be a cycle of just you just can't get out of it. And we've got a good exercise that we'll touch on that in a second. Credit cards are the biggest ones, right? I mean, we all know credit cards, which I just saw. It was a Kansas City article. I can't remember. I think it's the average household. Can't remember if it was Jackson County or Johnson County, has an average of $12,000 in credit card debt. That's tough. And when we start looking at what that actually does to your finances, if you're making minimum payments on that and not paying that off, that is almost an entire another mortgage that you're paying on that credit card debt, depending on what level it is. So credit cards are far and above the biggest one. Huge problem in the United States with that, which I don't want to get on my soapbox too much, but they're shoving credit cards down our throat, telling you to finance everything. They're not helping us. They're not helping the problem. So credit cards are the biggest one, and then high interest consumer type loans. So that's what I talked about earlier. There'll be a slide on beware of payday loans. I think, us living in Kansas City, some of us have probably heard about what happened with the payday loans thing 10, 15 years ago. They can be pretty predatory. I mean, seriously, it sounds too good to be true because it is too good to be true. We'll give you an advance on your paycheck today, but then we're going to charge you 40% interest on it. Very, very tough to get out of. So be very careful about that type of stuff, which again, that's what the emergency fund is for. So you don't find yourself in a place where you need to take out that payday loan. So now here we are to kind of this quick little debt management exercise to talk about the different types of ways to target debt. So we already talked about a lot of this stuff, bar low interest rate, try and minimize the length of the term. If you can, increase your payment amount, but you're end up going to paying less interest if it's a lower term. And then borrow for things that increase your future earning power, right? So that's, again, student loans. That's a good type of debt to have. Mortgage, because that's an asset and you're increasing your equity in. And then debt to income ratio. You do not want to be paying more than 30% of the money, 36% of the money that you bring in every month towards debt, right? So, and you're going to see the house is a lot of that. So first thing we'll touch on is credit cards. Spent some time talking about that. So here's one, $2,000 balance. That doesn't sound like that's too big of a problem, but if you're making minimum debt payments on that, and then you start paying interest on that $2,000. It's gonna take over 10 years to pay that off, if you make that minimum payment of $45 each month. Now, instead of a $2,000 balance, you're gonna pay 150% of that in interest. So that $2,000 balance just turned into over $5,600, just if you're paying those minimum payments. Now we start talking about whether it's, paying down the house or building up your emergency fund. This is a good example of what's better, emergency fund or this. Even if you can add an extra $50 to this, it's gonna cut that number in half, right? So it's those are the types of things that we wanna look at. Mortgage, the next couple will be good ones. So this is again, one of those, we talked about 50% of your money in the once column, 28% is kind of, that we got these numbers from Fidelity. No more than 28% should be going towards housing. I think where we are with rates right now, if you bought a house in the last 5 years or maybe the last 3 years, that's just not gonna be the case. I mean, housing is very expensive right now. So 28% is, rough framework to start from, but may not always be super realistic. Obviously, usually reasonable interest rates, even right now, interest rates are reasonable. When we look over the long term, interest rates are actually below their 60-year average, which is really tough to believe, but 70s for some of us, not myself, but some of us in the workforce know how interest rates were in the 70s, approaching 20%. So obviously a good way to build equity, and then home insurance, property taxes, all that stuff. So that is one of the benefits, right, of rent versus of mortgage, is you don't have to pay for that stuff when you're renting. You don't have to pay for home insurance, you don't have to pay for property taxes. Something breaks, call the landlord, and he'll go do the landlord special and slap some spackle over it and move on. But and then the
As you say in property.
I know. Right as it came out of my mouth. Right as it came out of my mouth. Right as it came out of my mouth. You can tell that I've had some histories in the past, but so moving on from the landlord special joke, but so auto loans, again, it says rates can vary, but I do think that most car loans, depending on what you're using the car for, a lot of times you sit people down and talk through their budget. It's like, oh yeah, I just bought a new truck, it's $500 a month. It's like, you don't have room for $500 a month towards a truck, right? So those types of things is coaching people through that. And then the payday loan, I told you we'd have a slide on this. So short-term loan to get you to the next paycheck. Again, it's usually for those types of things that are like, I'm not taking out a payday loan to go do something fun. It's because something happened that you need money for, whether it is rent, whether it is utilities, whether it's a furnace or AC or whatever goes out. That's what that emergency fund is supposed to protect against. So if you're in a place where you run into a situation like this, come to us. And that's the thing we can kind of help you through. This is the absolute last option if you find yourself in this place. All right, so then kind of the tips for paying down debt. You may have seen some of this, and if you listen to Dave Ramsey at all, I know he's got a lot of tricks about paying down debt. And he likes the snowball method of just get going, pay down those small debts and just get some momentum going. And actually the way to save the most money is the avalanche method. But again, to each their own. So we'll kind of go through what each one looks about. So both of these next kind of situations that we'll look at are assuming you have an extra $100 each month in your budget to put towards a minimum debt payment. So let's compare the avalanche method to the snowball method. So avalanche method, and for both of these people, these three loans are the same. They're going to be kind of flipped based on the target that we're going. Avalanche method is starting with the highest interest rate, so starting at 20%, then we'll pay the 6%, then we'll pay the 3%. So this is kind of how it looks, from a math standpoint. So the minimum payment on this $20,000 loan, let's just call that a car loan, is $450 a month. Well, I'm already paying the $450 on loan one. This is likely going to be a mortgage, right, at $1,000 a month, and then loan 3% interest. That may be student loan or something that you've got left on there. So you're paying all three of these, $450, $1,000, and $100. So about $1,500 a month is what you're paying in your loans. You said, hey, just got a raise. I found extra money in my budget. Now I've got $100 extra to put towards my minimum debt payments. I'm going to increase loan one from $450 to $550 because we're starting with that highest interest rate first. If we add $100 a month to that, it's going to shave 2 years off of that term. And then also you're going to save over $5,700 in interest just by adding $100 a month in that. Then once you've paid that one off now 2 years early, you take that $550 that you were paying on loan one, and now you apply it to loan two. So now that $1,000 payment becomes $1,500, a little bit more than $1,500. Then you pay off loan two, then you take that $1,500 per month and apply it to loan three. if you go in that order, total interest paid will be $45,340, about $12,000 less than if you just paid the minimum payments all the way through, and you're gonna pay it off 3 years early, right? So that's just from having $100 extra a month. You will save $12,000. That is meaningful, right? Really meaningful money. Other method would be the snowball method. Again, there's gonna be savings here, but it's just a little bit different because, and this is also just based on the loans we have here. Of course, for each person, it's gonna be different. So loan 3, again, we're starting with, hey, I got $10,000. Let's get that one done so I can move on to the next one. Same thing, we're gonna start with that loan and then just move down the track. So increase from 100 to 200 on loan 3. We're gonna pay that one off. Then we're gonna apply that $200 to loan, the loan 1, the $20,000 one, 20% interest, and move on down the track. That one, you'll shave 2 years off and pay about $6,000 less. So in this specific scenario, just the way that the terms and interest rates fall out. There we go, $12,000 in this one, 3 years early. Snowball method's gonna be $6,000 in 2 years early. So gonna be about an extra $6,000 that you save by doing the avalanche method. That's not to say that avalanche method is always the right route to go. For this specific scenario, that's what it was. More likely, avalanche is usually gonna save you more money if you do have a high interest loan, like 20%, like we saw in this example. It's not always gonna be the case though. Any questions on this stuff? Okay. So this is really kind of the last piece. I mean, I talked about credit cards before. Credit cards are a good tool, especially when we're talking about building credit. It's gonna let you, get access to a higher credit limit on your credit cards. It's gonna give you, better, rates when you go to try and finance things like cars or houses. Number one thing they're gonna look at is payment history. Are you making those minimum payments on time? Hopefully, we're making more than those minimum payments. The next big thing they're gonna look at is amount owed. How much do you have on that credit card or whatever it may be? And on credit cards, you don't want to carry a balance more than 30% of your credit limit. That is the limit. Once you start carrying a balance more than 30% of your limit, it's gonna start dinging you on your score. So hopefully it's not approaching that 30% number, but if it is, then we know we gotta make purchases on there. Try and remember that if you are gonna make a purchase that uses over 30% of that balance, pay it down really quickly and get it back below that 30% threshold. Then the next one is account age, which there's not a whole lot you can do to that, once you open an account, the age is what it is. New accounts and inquiries, and then the credit mix, the different types of credit you have, right? You've got car loan, house loan, credit card, student loan, whatever it may be. Having a breadth of different types of credit is a good thing. They want to see that you've got multiple, sources of credit that you're paying them off on a timely basis. New accounts is probably, I would say, other than making sure you're hitting your payments and keeping it below 30%. The only other way to really start increasing your credit score is through new accounts. That's not a solicitation to go start taking out credit cards all over the place. But if you do have a place that you shop all the time, if you open a credit card in that place and you only shop that credit card there, you'll probably get benefits from it. And if you know, hey, I'm already spending money at this place, maybe it does make sense to open another line of credit. Again, I'm not recommending that you do this at all the stores you shop at, but if there's one particular one that may make sense, maybe that's an avenue to look at if and only if, that makes sense for your situation. And then of course, make your loan payments and all that stuff on time. I know that was a lot. Any questions on the debt payment stuff?
Where do, when you consolidate your credit cards into personal loans, where do those fall on the spectrum?
Depends what the rate is.
Yeah.
Depends what the rate is. Yep. So there are good companies out there that will do that for you. And again, like in any business, they're doing it to make money.
Yeah.
So what they think they're doing is they're inheriting your debt and they're gonna make more money than the rate that you're paying them.
Yeah.
Right? So, or the rate that they're paying on that debt, right? So if they consolidate all those, they say, hey, we're gonna pay 7% aggregate across this, we'll charge you 8%. Right? So then everything's consolidated in one place, but they're doing it to make money. So it really is probably more of a ease that they're just giving you one avenue to be able to pay your debt off and have everything consolidated in one place. But again, it's not as easy as, if you've got consolidated debt, you gotta attack that right away. Again, if it's a pretty reasonable number, and it depends on the types of debts within there, then that, we still may say, make sure you got that emergency fund in a good place, make sure you're taking the 6% in the 401k, then it's debt payments are right there. Okay, so again, it's it's too variable just based upon what the interest rate is in that situation.
Mhm.
Okay, any other questions on this piece? Okay, well, the only other stuff that I have is just a reminder on, if you haven't signed up for the 401k plan, I know we did move recently, so it is at T. Rowe Price. Website is rps.troprice.com. You can also just type in T. Rowe Price 401k in Google and it'll get you to the right place. If you've never signed up before, top right, it's gonna say register. You go in and register just like you have for any other thing. Create a username, a password, a zip code, all that kind of stuff. And then you'll go from there. They also have a fully functional app, T. Rowe Price Personal. And you can do all that stuff on there. It is the one that says personal. It sounds like it might be a little bit of a misnomer, but that is the one. If you have not enrolled and you download the app, you'll go to the transactions tab, which is right in the bottom middle. And that's where the enroll button is. It's interesting that it's on that tab, but that's how you do it from your phone. Okay. And just one thing I'll leave you guys with is these are some of the things that Jake and I will talk about. By no means is that an all-inclusive list, but if something on there is, hey, I want to know how that applies exactly to my, personal situation. These are the types of things that we'll meet with you guys about. Okay, so you can shoot us an email, we can schedule a Zoom call, we can hop on the phone, whatever makes sense. Okay.
Excellent.
All
Great
right.
job.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Really like the examples.
Okay, good.
That was
Yeah, well,
helpful.